I feel like he's an owner that has the right intentions. I think he means well. Problem is he's meddling. Why are you even in team meetings? Like in a season, why is he in team meetings? And then talking about Barkley more specifically, where you can give your feelings after the fact, all my grandkids have Barkley jerseys and this or that. You know what I took from that? While I know he's trying to connect with the fan base, the reality is I believe he is the reason the Giants didn't trade him last year at the trade deadline. If you read between the lines, the Giants kept Saquon Barkley. Why? If essentially they thought they were going to be gone, and I guarantee you Joe Shane's smart enough to know that he likely would be. And I'm not saying I would or wouldn't. I'm saying what they did. They kept him, and then they lost him. And I think it's an owner, BT. I read all those comments. I feel like Mara's meddling too much with the Giants.
I hear you, but I got to tell you, I've been pretty critical of John Mara the last couple of years. I think most Giant fans have. You respect him as a person, good, very decent, charitable man. But in terms of getting his fingerprints on these Giants the last couple of years, really last decade or so, I don't think he's done a great job. I don't agree with this. I don't agree with what you said now. I don't agree with any sentiment that thought that the Giants should have traded Saquon. And I'll tell you why. You go back to now, the trade deadline was October 31st. The Jet-Giant game was October 29th, right? That eyesore. Oh, God, how gross was that game? Wow.
Right. I don't loosely described as a game.
Yeah, it was a punt fest, and the Giants were going backwards with DeVito, terrified to move forward.
Breakout
no, that's right. Yeah, they talked about it on national TV. Right. Woo! Anyway, so the Giants dropped to 2-6 at that point. And listen, you watched the Giants, and you knew that optically and just from a manpower perspective, the Giants were going nowhere last year. However, this thought that the Giants would have gotten anything of significance for Saquon Barkley, I think, is incredibly far-fetched. Like, I've heard, I don't know if it was Evan, and I'm not taking a shot at Evan, but I think it was Evan when he was going back and forth with Tiki, like, threw out the thought, well, maybe the Giants could have got a first-round pick. Oh, you crazy? Or a second-round pick? Maybe the Giants could have coerced a fifth-rounder out of somebody.
Well, it's better than nothing.
Well, and I knew you were going to say that, and you're right. Literally, it's better than nothing. But I think that when you evaluate the situation then, even though we knew the Giants would go nowhere, Green Bay made the wild card at 9-8. At 9-8. And the Giants on the back end of the schedule had a couple of games that we thought that they could win, which they actually did.
But if it's the owner's decision, that's where I have a problem. Forget about whether it was right or wrong to trade him, to not trade him.
Yep.
It's that I don't want the owner meddling, and I feel like Mara is.
Okay, so do I think that he meddled at that point? I do. That's why when we started this, I said, I hear you. I think he's changing a little bit because I think he knows he needs to. Think about, everybody's reacting to the text message where he said that he was sick, or what was the word that he used?
He said he was sick.
Sick. Okay, so basically said he's heartbroken, this didn't work out. Well, if he would have remained married to sentimentality, he would have stepped in and usurped the power of his somewhat new general manager and said, hey, listen, Shane, I know that you guys don't think that he's worth $30 million guaranteed. He means too much to me, and he means too much to the fan base, Doesn't matter what you want to do, he's staying. Get the contract done, no matter what it is, no matter how punitive it is in terms of the cap and the de-emphasis of the running back, get it done. He did the exact opposite. When it came time to really lay out, and let the people that he hired do their job, John Mara did that.
Right. He does it, but his presence, they're like, yeah, I didn't like it. I let everybody know my feelings on it, but ultimately I let them make the decision. Even the same thing. Oh, no, I know Dable's not acting. I want him to be himself, but if it gets a little too much, then I'll let him know, and I don't think it's too bad because I've been in on team meetings. The owner, and look, he's the owner, can do whatever he wants. But to have success, I don't think that the owner should be in on team meetings or telling Dable how he should be, how he shouldn't be, scrutinizing every move, giving his input on how much he loves Barkley or how much he believes in Daniel Jones. Oh, I believe Daniel Jones in 2022. No offense. I don't care he's the owner. I get it, and I respect that, but I care what the football people say about him.
Yep.
Not what the owner says about Daniel Jones. What Joe Shane and Brian Dable say about Jones and Barkley and how to build a team, that's what matters, not what John Mara says. And I feel like his presence is too large, looming over every decision, if not flat out meddling in the decisions that the Giants are making. I think it's hurting them.
I'm sorry, Sal, but you know what's funny? You think about that meddling owner. You think about that big shadow that's loud.
Like Jerry Jones.
Like Jerry Jones, like George Steinbrenner back in the day, like a few others. It's actually the opposite. He might have his fingerprints on some things, but nobody doubts that. But he's he's more docile than explosive or just, inserting himself into the story. I think he prefers to lay in the background. Listen, I don't think it's been a great ownership run at all. I don't think really lately, I don't think anybody does. There's been way too many failures, way too many bad decisions, way too many GMs, way too many coaching changes. The way it went down with Coughlin, optically, it looked really bad when he walked off that stage. But think about, this is why I disagree with you, Sal. Think about the two most important decisions that the Giants have had up until this point, and then obviously that changes with draft night coming up soon. Number one, what to do with Saquon. Eventually, and he walked toward the edge of the plank, but he didn't jump. He stepped back, and he let the football people do what they had to do. Number one. Number two, the most recent story is that he's given them their blessing. Hey, if you want to draft the quarterback, even though I like Daniel Jones. Well, I hear you.
Like, why? I guess that's my point, too. Why do we need his blessing?
Well, because it's his team.
No, it's not. He's the owner. It's Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll's team to make the decision with as far as personnel. He even says, well, I'm an owner who lets the personnel decisions be made by Shane and Dable, unless it's like something off the field issues. That's fine, but then stop. Stop talking then, because his words.
Well, he's at the owners' meeting. They're asking him questions.
No, I understand that.
I mean, everybody's you got Woody talking about bringing back Zach Johnson.
Yeah, I
Zach
understand.
Wilson. You prefer that?
That's a different thing, and we'll get into that. But for me, it's more about his presence, and because they've been such successful owners for a long period of time.
I think, 05? Does that sound right, though? 05, thank you.
What?
Where John officially came in.
Okay.
Wellington, yeah.
Well, they've been the ownership, the Mara family, whatever. They've had such an established foundation that it's like everybody runs to them and runs to the top, that their voice is so powerful and so meaningful, even as it pertains to individual players. It just, to me, the best run organizations are one where the owner provides the resource to the team to do whatever they can to win.
Sure.
And gets the hell out of the way and allows the general manager and head coach to make those decisions. And I feel like while Mara has the right intentions and sometimes does and says the right things, his presence looms too large. He's not enough in the background as an owner. Even the fact that we would get his thoughts, specific thoughts on Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley, I think is an issue.
Yeah, but Sal, I don't think that this is different really with any other team. I mean, you go to the owners' meetings, you discuss the rules changes, and some things have happened. We could probably throw those in later as well. And you're asked about Saquon Barkley, who just went to one of your rivals, your most despised rival. You're asked about the 6th overall pick. Daniel Jones coming off a knee injury, $40+ million. They can get out of it after this year. These are questions he's going to be asked.
Yeah, I think
unless he doesn't show up, what do you want him to do?
And he says, I think Daniel Jones is more like the 2022 Daniel Jones. And
but actions speak louder than words. You're not gonna take Daniel Jones.
But we've also, let's go based off
take his knees out. But you want to show him respect, and what you do on draft night will tell us exactly what he thinks of Daniel Jones's future.
But I agree with you. Actions speak louder than words. But I'm combining his words with past actions. We've all said, the reason why they've held on to Jones and Barkley too long was because of the ownership, specifically Daniel Jones. And then we find out more details about Barkley. I feel like if the presence wasn't looming of ownership, then maybe they would have traded Saquon Barkley at the deadline, and they would have been better off for it, and it would have stung a lot less. You would have not only gotten whatever pick that they had gotten, but it also wouldn't have been like, oh, my God, he jolted us for the Eagles. Come on.
Well, but his contract.
Which one is it? You're either in or you're out.
Well, he still could have gone to the Eagles, because if he was dealt before October 31st, say if he got dealt to the Steelers,
but it still would have stung a little bit less.
No, yeah, I agree. You probably would have gotten a 5th, I'm not saying you would have walked away empty-handed like the Giants walked away now, but I listen. These are very delicate, emotionally driven decisions and situations. That's why I use the word sentimentality.
Right.
And I appreciate the fact that John is tapped into. He's not a heartless, soulless owner. When you straddle that line too often, like familiarity with the players, and again, being emotionally connected to them, that can blur and distort your way of doing business. But ultimately, it didn't, because no matter how much affection Mara has and will always have, but had in the past tense as a Giant for Saquon, he stepped away. And no matter how much he wants this Daniel Jones thing to work, we know it's not going to. We know they're going to take a quarterback. He's going to step back with that as well. And by the way, it's not like he's owned the team for 5 years and they've been, a dumpster fire for 5 years. The man's won championships.
Yeah.
I'm not saying he's perfect, but
he's also run the thing into the ground the last several years.
I agree. That's why I've been all over him.
And
I think the Giants have lost their way, but maybe this is the way to get their way back by stepping aside.
Yeah, I feel like there's just too much of an impact on decisions, whether it's indirect or not, from ownership. And put yourself in the shoes of Brian Daboll. Mm-hmm. And I get that the media is going to ask questions about, do you believe in Shane and Daboll, and how about, him fighting, whatever. And some of the comments from Mara, while they were very supportive, saying, I fully believe these are the guys, nothing's promised. I believe these are the guys. And, if at times I feel like he gets out of control, I'll let him know. Like, is that somebody that you'd feel comfortable working for? Or somebody like Woody Johnson, who I know he's not totally out of the picture, but Woody doesn't speak about individual players or people, whether it's a head coach or general manager, the way that Mara does. There's like this looming presence that to me would make me a little scared to work for him. Like, I'd rather just let me be free and easy. And if I screw up, fire me. Do what you got to do. But let me be me. And I feel like his presence can be detrimental. And by the way, they've had such turnover that, think about it, whether it's the head coaches, general managers, certain players, I don't think there's any way to dispute his impact in a negative way in recent years.
I think from the time that he assumed ownership, I think that it's been much more down than up. I don't think anybody would dispute that, despite the two really, really high points with the Lombardis here. But I think that when you look at, like, him sitting in our meetings, right? Just imagine, now we meet as a show, every day, and, Spike's getting ready to leave us, but before Spike... he still hasn't left. Has he left?
No, I don't think
I've
so.
seen him in a while. But before he officially leaves, and we'll still hook up once in a while just to structure things. And we've got a show here. We're doing this. We've got this coming up down at DJ's Belmar. Like, just to get things together from a show and a station point of view. Imagine if these meetings were irrational and word on the street was that our boss, for now, Spike, was a tyrant or just out of control or this unchecked ego, and it was detrimental to the station. You don't think Chris Olivero, who was our ultimate boss, would have the latitude to walk down and say, all right, what the hell's going on in these meetings? I'm just going to watch. I'm going to observe.
Yeah.
That's what owners, that's what bosses do.
I know, but if you had every higher up and the owner of the company in these meetings, then you'd feel a certain way about it. And I just don't, look, let's see them prove it. Let's see the Giants go out there and have success, sustained success, which they have not had in years. Those comments from the owners' meetings yesterday, to me, I read them. While I didn't think they were the worst thing ever, I felt like coming away from that, instead of being encouraged that, okay, Mara gets it and I'm happy that he's the owner of the team that I root for, I felt like, you know what? He's saying that he's not meddling, but I think he is meddling. And I do think it hurts the Giants to a certain extent. BT and Sal on the Fan are friends at Town Fair Tire. Remind you that at Town Fair Tire, you always get the guaranteed lowest price on name brand tires from Connecticut to Maine. Nobody beats Town Fair Tire. Nobody.
Sal, real quick, what should he have said? If he said X, Y, and Z, you would have been more on board. Like, hey, that's just, a Joe Shane thing. Completely defer.
I think less detail. I don't need specifics on how he feels about players, and also knowing the facts that they didn't trade Barkley last year for a reason. And by the way, I said at the time I wouldn't have traded him. However, I would have tried to sign him. I know things change and all that, but I think they made a mistake there. You can't just let a player walk for nothing, even if it meant that you get an extra pick. What if that extra pick could have been the difference in trading up in this year's draft for a quarterback? Like, you can't say that it couldn't have been.
I can't, but I don't think, practically speaking, that it would have been.
Well, you don't think they would have gotten at least a fourth rounder for Saquon Barkley?
No. I think maybe a fifth.
I think they would have probably gotten a fourth. And
for
if
half
anything,
a season for a running back?
Yeah, I mean, you've seen some of the values of the look. All right, either way, it would have been an extra pick. It would have been
something to your point. Yeah. I'm not saying it would have been nothing, but
and not only an extra pick, it could have been an extra pick and made your team a little bit worse in season, which could have led to a higher pick.
Well,
I'm not saying tanking, but I'm saying the thought process at the time has to be, we're not good enough to go to the postseason this year. We're likely not. Like, Joe Shane is smart enough to see down the road. We're likely not going to be in a spot where we're going to sign Saquon Barkley. We'd like to, but it'd have to be at the right price. It'd have to be a perfect circumstance. Even if they were surprised that Barkley ended up getting what he got, ultimately, they weren't really close on that. So why not foresee that and say, oh, and by the way, if a byproduct of getting an extra pick for a player who we're likely not retaining entertaining is losing him, maybe getting a higher pick, but then the owner steps in, and you feel, even if he doesn't step in directly, you feel him over you saying, I love this player.
Yep. Would you rather have somebody like John Mara, who maybe allows his heart to get in the way a little bit with certain things, even extending Eli's run, which is why you drafted Saquon and why they waited so long to go to Geno Smith and the way they did it? I mean, there's been a lot of mistakes with the Giants over the last 10 years. Everybody knows that. But would you prefer that type of ownership or, and I know the Knicks are in a great spot, won again last night. We'll hit them later. DiVincenzo was banging last night. Or somebody like Dolan, who seems emotionally detached from the team. What's more, I'd rather have Mara.
No.
I mean, I'd rather have the ownership that I feel like lives and dies with it. And I know Dolan wants to win. I get that.
Right.
He's changed the last couple of years for the good. He's kept his fingerprints off the Knicks and let his basketball people do their job, which is very, very gratifying. But I don't know. I don't mind if my owner has this affection for some guys on the roster because I don't. Now, if they would have given him $35 million guaranteed because of Mara, I'm sitting here saying, dude, you messed up. You let your heart get in the way of business. Didn't happen.
You think it was comfortable working for George Steinbrenner?
No.
Okay. And that's kind of my point. While Mara is a much nicer, maybe level-headed version of George Steinbrenner, where that presence is undeniable. And now, again, to his credit, he says he's going to step back and let the coaches and Shane, in this case, Shane and Dable specifically, make their decisions. But feeling that presence, where Steinbrenner, you wouldn't just feel his presence. He'd come in and start firing people left and right. But I think there's an in-between that Mara is at.
Yeah,
and
I don't think he's perfect.
Like, I like Dolan now because...
Well, because they're winning.
Well, because it feels like you don't hear anything about him or from him.
Yeah.
That's what an owner should do. Give the resources to... Like, this is Leon Rose's team.
Yep.
That's how I want it. I want it to be Joe Shane and Brian Dable's team. Now, Leon Rose had to earn this being his team. At first, Dolan gave him the keys, just like he did with Phil Jackson. To Dolan's credit, he has tried. He's just failed. He gave the keys to Phil Jackson, didn't work out. Gave the keys to Leon Rose, it has worked out. But this is Leon Rose's team, not Jim Dolan. And with Mara there, I still feel like it's Mara's team. BT and Sal on the Fan. We'll get to your calls on the other side. We'll work in the Jets as well. You mentioned it, BT, with Woody talking about Zach Wilson. Can he really be back for another year? Plus, plenty of baseball to get to, just days away from opening day as well. You mentioned the Knicks, your boy DiVincenzo going nuts. Yeah, but it was against the Pistons.
I mean, maybe you show the man a little respect at some point. Fellow Italian.
Okay, do it in the postseason.
Dissed him all year.
Yeah, come on with these records now with the league, no defense.